So on your preview, you learned the term thermodynamics, and thermodynamics has to do with the study of the branch of chemistry that has to do with energy transfers and transformations. So remember that cells and organisms in biology, everything is governed by the laws of physics and chemistry. And so there are laws of thermodynamics that living organisms also follow. And so you probably recognize some of this. You've probably heard some of this before, but probably it was in the form of matter. Matter cannot be created or destroyed. But matter is only a part of it. Energy is the other part. So we have the laws of thermodynamics apply to matter and energy. So since we're dealing with energy, the first law of thermodynamics is that energy cannot be created or destroyed. Sometimes when we're speaking or when we express something in biology, we may accidentally say it in a way that sort of violates this rule. We don't want to say that energy is created or destroyed. Energy can only be transferred or transformed. Transformation means changing form from one form to the other. For example, from kinetic to potential or from potential to kinetic, changing form. Transfer is going from one physical object to another. So if, let's say, a billiard ball hits another billiard ball, the first billiard ball has kinetic energy, and when it hits the second billiard ball, the energy is transferred to the other ball. It's not changing form, it's kinetic energy on the first ball, and when it hits, it's now kinetic energy on the second ball. It's just changing which object has kinetic energy. But either way, whether it's transformations or transfers, energy has to remain constant in the universe. That's the rule. The universe, the amount of energy in the universe remains constant. And it cannot be created or destroyed. So sometimes when we're speaking of energy, we talk about the cell makes energy, but that's not true. Makes implies created. That's not true. The cell takes in molecules that already have energy, like glucose, but then it transfers and transforms the energy in the glucose into the form of ATP. And so I'm going to try to be very particular about the language, and hopefully I won't screw up, and because the energy cannot be created or destroyed. So be careful when you're wording something that you don't imply that it can. But cells don't make energy. They take in energy in one form, and they can then transform it into another form or transfer it into another molecule. So that's kind of the language that we want to be using when we think about this. No conversion, no transfer or transformation of energy is ever 100% efficient, meaning some energy is lost as heat in every transfer and transformation. And heat, remember, is a wasted form. So a little bit of energy is, we say, lost. It goes to the universe. It's still there, but it becomes a wasted form. And finally, living systems cannot create the energy they need. They have to acquire it. So we said photosynthetic organisms capture energy from the sunlight, and they transform it into the bonds of glucose, and then glucose is taken in maybe by an animal, and then inside those cells, the energy in the bonds of glucose is transferred into other molecules. So it's always about taking in molecules or energy in different forms and then transforming and transferring it from there. So I said on this, and I'm not kidding, that you need to memorize the first law of thermodynamics. If you can't memorize it or don't want to, then that can go on your note card. But I'm going to ask you detailed questions about the first law of thermodynamics on the post quiz and on the exam. So make sure you know that one. And there's 5 bullet points. So I'm not just saying you have to know the first one, I mean all of it. The second law of thermodynamics you also need to know, although it's not as long, I think you could say. The second law of thermodynamics has to do with a concept called entropy. Entropy is disorder, the amount of disorder. is called entropy. And so if a system like a cell has low entropy, that means it has a low level of disorder. So it has a lot of order, structure. So disorder is what entropy means. And so cells are always trying to create order, but the universe, on our first bullet point here, actually tends towards disorder. So entropy is continuously increasing in the universe. What that means is that living organisms are always sort of trying to fight against that tendency. Living organisms acquire and expend energy in an attempt to maintain order, to maintain structure and order. Structure is order. And so when molecules are built, like a dehydration synthesis builds a polymer, that polymer has more order, more structure than the monomers that it was built from. So building reactions create order. Anabolic reactions create order. Catabolic reactions create disorder. So if you think about things in order and disorder, entropy is increased when molecules are broken down. So what we're saying is if entropy, an increase in entropy is the direction, the natural direction of the universe, then the natural direction of the universe is for breakdown reactions to happen. And what cells have to do is take in energy and use that energy to try to create order in the face of a universe that is working in the other direction. Now, eventually all organisms will die and the structures in the cell will be broken down. That's decomposition. And so therefore the universe will prevail. Death will be followed by decomposition, and so disorder will prevail after death. But during life, when a cell or an organism is alive, the energy is being used to keep order. That's one way of thinking about it. All right, so I'm going to, I know that was a short segment, but I'm going to take a break. And then on the next lecture segment, we will start looking at chemical reactions and start to maybe integrate some of these concepts together.